Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing another episode of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them to their real-life fossil counterparts. And today, we've got another pack from Feilong, who's done a wonderful job just remastering and remaking a lot of these wonderful dinosaurs to make them still stylized to Jurassic Park, but fit the more realistic anatomy that we have from the fossils. So today we're doing his Ceratopsian pack. So this covers all the Ceratopsians, all the horned dinosaurs in Jurassic World Evolution 2. So like Sinoceratops, Pachyrhinosaurus, Triceratops, all that. So I'm really excited to get stuck into this one. So just letting you guys know, remember, they're all done by Feilong. So yeah, we're going to be starting off. We're going in alphabetical order again, because I think that's probably the easiest way to do it for these guys. So yeah, we're going to be starting off with Chasmosaurus. And look at these wonderful guys here. Let's find one in the sunlight over here that we can see. We can have a look at this one. Let's see. This one over here. I'm going to go... We can have a look at them in first person view, I think. Let's have a look at them in first person view. Look at these wonderful guys. Really nice Chasmosaurus. So, obviously these guys are one of those really cool ceratopsians. We can see some of the changes here. I think it actually really looks much nicer. You can see the body's been made much more round to better compare to the fossils, though I think the back should probably be a little bit more obvious because it's almost like a hump, and then the tail and the hips, a very flat area of the hips, and then goes down into the tail. Big and chunky as these guys were. Ceratopsians are kind of really famous for having these real barrel chests and potentially front limbs that could potentially be sprawling. It's kind of a debate whether exactly what positions the front legs in, but most likely were semi-sprawling to upright is the most likely hypothesis. And we can see the really changes to the face here that I think really is the most obvious. So you can see the face has been kind of elongated a little bit. And we can see that Chasmosaurus has like this really, really long middle horn, and then the two brow horns kind of go up and curl back. It's very, very distinct look that I think is really cool. And another really cool thing about this guy is got this really tall frill. And they've got the holes in there, which is Triceratops is very weird for not having holes in its frill. They're called fenestrae, and it's very likely in life there would have been lots of skin covering it, and it would have been perfect for like a comparable to like a peacock's tail potentially as something for sexual display or any type of display really. And yeah, I'm just a really, really big fan of Chasmosaurus. Really wonderful guy. Quite a famous dinosaur, but we can go over some of the inaccuracies here. For the most part, it's pretty good. I love the changes to the face. They are the most obvious. But the ones I have to point out is the feet. Obviously, the first three digits have the nails. But the feet are also pretty good. Tail could probably be a little bit more accentuated or a little bit more obvious. See if we can find it in one of the other guys here. So, yeah, that looks a little better. But the Chasmosaurians and those kind of animals are very characteristic for having these three horns and then kind of round bodies and these shorter tails. Really, really cool, though. I'm a big fan of how these guys come out. So yeah, and we can see this body is just made much bulkier. And then you can see the big muscles around the neck that would be used to hold the head up, because these dinosaurs have quite large heads. So yeah, big fan of the Chasmosaurus. I really like how this guy's come out. A really, really cool dinosaur. I really like how they accentuated the difference in the head, because often people just make it like a weird Triceratops, but I really like the real nice differences that Feilong put into it to really make it look like Chasmoceratops. And it looks wonderful. Big, big fan. So let's move on. So we've got our next animal coming up. So let's just wait for these guys to move away from area here. Because I know these guys, they like to hang out there, but really we don't want them there. So next we've got one returning from last week. Very interestingly, we've got a Sinoceratops. Oh, it's blocked by Dinosaur. Uh-oh. There's a bit of mess up, that's okay. So let's have a look at one of these wonderful guys. We've got one over here, standing over here, looks wonderful. So let's have a look at you. We'll have a look at you in first person view, I think. So they're quite a bit larger than it should be. I believe that the Pseudoceratops is only about 6 or 7 meters long. We're actually probably about the same size as these Chasmosaurines here. Chasmosaurus, I mean. But yeah, really, really wonderful guys, as you can see here. I really like this big... I like the changes to the head in particular. You can really see that big nose accentuated in the horns. They're very, very much like a cow, as you can see. It's kind of given that really, really characteristic look, where they have the... And they also put the extra keratin that most animals likely have, because when reconstructing dinosaur bones, often even like frills and horns and things, often it really only shows the bony core. And a lot of animals, not just dinosaurs, like lots of mammals with horns, like cows, sheep, things like that, they often have a very large keratin sheath that can go over that and can often make them in life much larger than they appear on the fossil. So a lot of people, paleoartists at least, are starting to realize that. So you can see these really big and wonderful horns here, and you can also see these guys have quite a rounded frill, as you can kind of see here. Really, really wonderful. I'm a big fan of how these guys come out. Like the frill in particular, and you can see the head's pretty spot on. They've got this really square head, which I think came out wonderfully. And then you have kind of the same issues with the other ones I keep mentioning. So they kind of have the, obviously the toes are wrong and the feet. The body should be much more rounded. The highest point would probably be around the back, so it'd be much more like a big oval rather than like a weird like rhomboid kind of shape, as you can kind of see here. It's not like a bison where they would have had this big hump. It would have most likely just been neck, then round up to a round body, and then come down to the tail. And the tail's alright. Ceratopsians generally didn't have very large tails. They were quite squat animals. It'd be much more something like this, or even less so. They'd potentially even just coming downwards. So yeah, I think that's also very, very interesting. And these guys actually came out rather well. I am a big fan of these guys. Sorry that you didn't get to see the cool animation of the walking out, but I guess that's just part of what it is sometimes. But I really do like the skins and the variation there. So let's let these guys walk off. We're not going to repeat that same issue again. So again, these guys are all done by Feilong, trying to keep them to the style of Jurassic World and Jurassic Park and all that. But obviously made anatomy a little bit more accurate to represent the real animals. So yeah, let these guys walk off, do their thing. So we're going to have the next animal here. We've got Pachyrhinosaurus. Okay, now this one I think is probably the best one. Let's have a look at this one walking over here. So let's have a look at you. So let's... Wonderful, wonderful. So this is probably the most accurate one so far, which is really, really awesome. So we can see some wonderful changes here. The species in particular, because there's a few species of Pachyrhinosaurus, but you can tell this one is this particular species. This is Pachyrhinosaurus lanscarii, which I believe was actually only described in like 2013 or something like that. Very recent species, but you can tell it's lanscarii because of these on the bottom of the frill, kind of like on the forehead area. You could kind of say it's got this little pronged area with the kind of almost looks like a dog tooth or like a seal tooth. It's got the two prongs and then the big one there. That's kind of how you tell it's the main can't even speak properly. The diagnostic feature really on, or the most obvious one that you can see on Lansquarai, but the others look a little bit different, like Palectorum and all that. But you can see I really like how the added keratin, as I mentioned, because Pachyrhinosaurus is very famous for having these large bosses, and it's very evident on the skeleton with and even on the skull with the large rugose texture of the bone, and the would have been really great for putting a lot of keratin on, where there'd be lots of areas for blood to kind of go and fuel that keratin and all that. And you can really see it on here, and I think it looks rather nice. Really gives it this big, bulky, dangerous look of it. And then you can see the other kind of cool characteristic it's got these curled horns at the top, kind of the two that go in the middle there, and then the two splaying out like that, which I think really is rendered wonderfully in these Pachyrhinosaurus. And then we can see this is actually, yeah, I think this is the most accurate one. It's got that very nice rounded body, as you can see here. It's got the neck and then rounds up here and then to the back here, and then the tail goes down. So for all the reference, more of these guys' bodies should be more like this in comparison. And yeah, I'm also a really big fan of these guys come out. I haven't mentioned any skins yet because we don't have too much from these guys yet, but we know from a lot of ceratopsians, particularly like Triceratops, things like that, they did have these kind of scales, which I think is really cool to show off on these guys. They had these large, almost nipple scales that really gave them a unique texture to them, and these big hexapodal ones, and then it would come down to the belly where they'd have almost like croc-like scoots down the bottom of their bellies there. But there's obviously comes with the caveat is that there's lots of different species, and that can wheel very wildly within certain animals, like even crocodiles, even though they have similar integument, they can look completely different on completely different species. So it's very hard to kind of create a catch-all like integument guide for a whole clade of animals like that. You can make some assumptions and play with it in terms of paleo art, but really it's really hard to do that. But I'm really cool. I'm just in love with this guy. I like how he's come back. It just looks like a real... it's the best one of the pack so far, definitely. But we can obviously see the feet aren't right and all that, the digits and all that. But in terms of the body and stuff, compared to the older ones from the first game, this one's basically spot on for Pachyrhinosaurus, other than probably the size. And even the tail is actually quite okay. Pachyrhinosaurus actually had a particularly long tail for a ceratopsian. But yeah, this guy's perfect. This is the best one so far out of the pack. And if all the ceratopsians in the game had a body kind of shaped like this one, they would be perfect. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this Pachyrhino. Feilong done a wonderful job with these guys. We're going to let them walk off and do their thing. I really love the different patterns as well. I love this one with the eye holes, or the eye markings there, which really would have been a thing that they most likely had, because having a big crest like that would be very good for sexual selection and things like that. And it's nice to have one that's like a little bit more bland, but still looks nice. It's nice that they're experimenting with the frills and such. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that one. So next, we've got another really, really cool guy. So we've got Pentaceratops. Oh, it's blocked by Dinosaur again! Damn it. I'll watch it from here. Okay. This is just a muck-up today, I guess. But we'll watch it here. So really, really wonderful guys here. So let's have a look at these wonderful Pentaceratops. Let's no, we'll have a look at first person view actually. Trying to find one standing in the sunlight. Oh, we got one there. So let's have a looky at you. Look at these wonderful big guys here. So Pentaceratops is a really, really interesting ceratopsian in terms of its looks. It's very different from, even though it's a Chasmosaurian, so it's related to Chasmosaurus and animals like that. It's just, yeah, Chasmosaurus, Triceratops, Torosaurus, a lot of those guys. But just look at how funky it looks. It's very weird compared to a lot of other ceratopsians, especially Chasmosaurus. It's kind of really long and lanky. It's got this really tall body, and it's from the skeleton that I have here. It's unlike the other guys. It's almost got like a hump at its back there, and it looks much taller, and it's got a shorter neck. It's really, really interesting, and it kind of makes sense considering this guy has potentially one of the largest heads of any land animal ever, like rivaling things like Torosaurus. So it's just absolutely enormous. And then you can see what I really like is that they've also kind of really changed the horns. And it gets the name Pentaceratops because penta means 5, so 5 horn face. So you can see there's kind of the 1, 2, 3, and then kind of 4, 5. So that gives it that name 5-horned face, which is really accentuated here. And you can see that they've also added the extra extent of the keratin. So that really shows that huge horn just going around there. Even though the bone core is much lower, you can see it's accentuated all that keratin. The general rule is that if it's like a bone, generally the keratin is like another half of that. So it'd be 1.5 times longer than it looks on the bone. So that really gives it that long look. And I really like that, along with this little brow horn. It's very similar in Triceratops, but if you know your dinosaurs, they're very, very different. Really, really cool guys. Let's have a look at you over here. I love Pentaceratops. You can see longer legs as well. This was actually pretty good in the first game, but it's really nice to see another one here. And then this guy had a particularly short tail, and I think that's rendered rather well on here. And then you can see the tall head and big neck this guy's got, and this guy just has a really, really impressive skull, long and tall, and then you can see all these different ecostals, I believe that's the term for them, going down the side of the frill, and then you get the name Pentaceratops because they have the 5 horns on the top there. So yeah, as you can see, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think this guy came out wonderfully. Oh, and you're so big. You can see the changes to the face there. Looks like a much more snug and a little bit elongated. These guys were most likely browsers or mid-level browsers or low-level browsers feeding on low plants, cycads, whatever really. Dinosaurs were probably not that picky, just like modern animals are not that picky, especially if they're large like this. But yeah, I'm a wonderful fan of these guys. That just came out beautifully. Pentaceratops is such a wonderful animal. I'm a big fan. And this is probably this almost kind of takes the one from Pachyrhino. I just love this Pachyrhino, but the Pentas kind of come up and almost showed you up. So you got some competition there, buddy. I'm a really big fan. Really wonderful how those guys came out. So what I'm going to do is make sure that they move away for this time. So let's have a look at now Sinoceratops. So now, this one would have been a bit more of a drama to kind of get right. So let's make sure you're alright. I'll wait till we get you into... No, we'll... So this is our not Pentaceratops, Sinoceratops. So this is the only one from Asia. And it's not quite as well known as a lot of the other ones on this list, but we can kind of tell from its generalized anatomy, things like that. It's known from like parts of the skull, some vertebrae, some shoulder blades, some vertebrae, things like that. But really, it's just, yeah, there's a lot to fix on this guy. We can see some of the changes here. It really doesn't got that big, almost like a rhino texture to it. That's very wrong. Most likely would have had large feature scales. I should have said the same for the Penta and all these guys. But obviously, integument varies widely. But we've got these very, very cool things here. These kind of 2 spikes there, we probably wouldn't know. But we know that they had these really interesting kind of epicostals on the frill here. And they kind of almost like curled up at the front, which I think looks really, really cool. And it's really nice to see that well demonstrated here. But these 2 little crests were most likely not there. And then, but we've got this one horn here, and this kind of roundish face, which is rendered pretty spot on here. I feel like it's just because the model was just so mucked up by Jurassic World It's just very, very hard to fix. We might need to put a new one in, but really, really nice. And you can see the round body here. The body looks much better. I think the back would probably be a little bit taller around here, so around like that. And you have that long tail. And you can also see here the because these guys are bird hip dinosaurs, so their hips were much more like a bird. So kind of the bones there would have come round like that, much more like a bird's. Instead of that ischium, pubic boot and all that, it would have came up round and came back there, which gave the gut a much more of an area to expand and really help with fermentation. So that's another really cool little adaptation with these guys. And another big glaring thing is that these holes in the fenestrae will not be there. It's most likely that well, pretty much for evidence from all other ceratopsians that these would have been covered by muscles, or not even muscles, but like skin and stuff, so that would have been great to display and things like that. And really the only animal that really didn't have this was like Triceratops, where it got that solid frill. But yeah, it's kind of one of them things. Face looks much better. We don't know as much about Sinoceratops compared to a lot of these American ceratopsians, but it's still really, really wonderful. So we're going to watch these guys do their thing. Watch them play. Why not? If they're going to stand around here, I don't want them... Is that Nabol? I really like the little tidbit. I really like that Jurassic World Evolution 2 added a lot of these new behaviors and things. I think it really adds a lot to the dinosaurs. So let's make sure they move out the way. I think this is the last one. Yep. So now we're moving on to the next one. So we've done from C to S. Now we've got our next S. We've got Styracosaurus, a really, really cool and famous one. So now we got another one here. We got a nice Skinner one here. Let's go look at first person mode. Have a look at the wonderful Styracosaurus. So yeah, now we've got this wonderful rendition of Styracosaurus. Really, really cool animal here. And we can see that they're very famous for these really interesting horns that they have, or epicostals coming off the frills. Really interesting is that we have a lot of specimens of these guys, and there was even one where they didn't develop properly. So it really leads to having a lot of individual variations. So if you guys want to create individuals, you can like make it, you could even base, like, even if you guys know Dinosauria, where they did that old buck kind of little short film, which I really loved. I thought it was awesome. They used that specimen as kind of inspiration, and it really gave it like an look as an individual animal, which I think was really, really awesome. So here we can see the wonderful Styracosaurus and some of the changes here. The face has been changed quite a lot, where they didn't have, because these guys were a centrosaurian, so the main difference is that they didn't have really any brow horns. These guys mainly just had that big nose horn. Though I think there was some that break the rule, but mostly Centrosaurians kind of center. And then we have this really, really wonderful guy here. Much leaner face. These guys had much leaner faces, and they had that tall frill that kind of went out and more triangular. And then you can have these really, really large epicostals coming up the top there. Those like top four are just humongous. And I think it came out rather well. Really, really awesome. And then we can see some of the changes to the body. The body looks so much better. The body is like pretty much perfect. Very round and oval, with the large legs there, with obviously the feet are wrong, but the posture is pretty much perfect. Big round body. And then you have the short tail here, which fits pretty nicely. So this one, I think the best so far are definitely the Pachyrhinosaurus, Pentaceratops, and Styracosaurus. Those are the three best, and I really just love Styracosaurus. It's such a cool animal. So let's have a look at camera view. Really wonderful. You can see that beautiful back body there. It's pretty much perfect. You can see the changes to the legs because Ceratopsians had these very large thighs because these guys were evolved from bipedal ancestors like Psittacosaurus. So I think that really shows off kind of their big thighs and big bulky body. Very similar vaguely to Rhinoceros, and you can see the keratin obviously makes that horn much more longer than it is than in the bones. So you can see that's kind of been elongated. So I'm a really big fan of how this guy's come out. Feilong has really done a wonderful job, and these guys are wonderful. So let's let these guys walk off. So now we're into the T's. So we've got T for Torosaurus, and let's just make sure these guys are gone before we release the Torosaurus. So these guys are another really nice one that he's made. So let's have a looky-loo. So let's make sure he's... Now we'll have a look at him in first-person view. We'll have a look at this wonderful big guy. And these guys were pretty big. These guys were quite similar in size to animals such as Triceratops, which is generally considered one of the, if not the largest ceratopsian. And this guy is now taken the favorite because I think this guy's so underrated. People just think he's a weird Triceratops, but they're very different looking than a lot of the than Triceratops. So he's very unique. As you can see, they're very big. One of the largest ceratopsians, rivaling like Triceratops and Triceratops in size. And you can see it's almost like almost looks like it's turning into Triceratops because you can see it's got the holes in its frill, the fenestrae, which is really kind of shrinking and stuff. There's even led to the hypothesis that these guys are an adult Triceratops, but that is very poorly supported at the moment. Though obviously there's debates around this thing. It's kind of the same with Nanotyrannus, that kind of debate. But it's generally considered not accurate at all. But you can see some of the major differences here. These guys had these large frills. Again, they have the largest head of any land animal with these large holes in there, which would have been covered by skin and stuff used for, of course, potentially display either for females or males or whatever. So we know that they were quite big and could potentially protect the neck as well. And we can see, I really like how they done the keratin around the head here and the horns. I really like that because the horn of these guys is obviously having that three-horned is very similar to that of Triceratops, but I like to make it look a little bit different. They kind of turned it down, and often the shape of the keratin around horns is often very different to what you think of the bone core. So I quite like how they've done this. And then Torosaurus also has this quite large, it's almost like a diamond. It's got like a large, or even like a pyramid, or just like a really nice triangle looking nasal horn, as you can see there. And they've also got this quite long beak, but they got a bit of a bulkier face. Very reminiscent of like Chasmosaurus, the bulky face here. It reminds me of, but you can see the wonderfully big body, and the changes to the body looks pretty much perfect. And then you can see obviously the feet are wrong, as I mentioned, and then you can have that long tail there. So yeah, this is honestly one of the better ones. This is just beautiful. I'm a big fan. This guy came out rather wonderfully. I love the skin on him as well. I think it came out wonderful. So I think this might have taken the crown for my next second favorite after Pentaceratops and Pachyrhinosaurus. So yeah, some really nice ones. We started with kind of the most basic one, but then we've really started to get into the good ones. So I'm really a big fan of how these guys have come out. So rather wonderful. I love this. This one reminds me of the Walking With skin. Walking With colors of this guy. But yeah, really wonderful. Big fan. So I just want to make sure they walk away and don't bother me. So we're going to have a look at the two Triceratops species, because Feilong was so kind to give us two species of Triceratops. The first one is going to be prorsus, and the second one is horridus, and we can talk about the differences between them. And yeah, I'm really excited to get stuck into this one, so let's have a look at prorsus. So let's make sure. Wonderful Triceratops, everyone's favorite big three-horned face. So you can see this one's actually probably more accurate, as the kind of scoots there are more similar to what we know of Triceratops' skin, because we, as I mentioned, we have these kind of like nipple scales that go around them. There were big feature scales that go down the body. Basically, just look at the one from Saurian or Prehistoric Kingdom. Those ones are pretty spot on. That's like the best kind of renditions of them. But look how wonderful he looks. So you can see some of the changes here. Big round body looks much nicer, I think. Really fits it well. And then you can see the difference in the frill between them and like Torosaurus. These guys have a much more short but more solid rounded frill. Potentially because T-Rex was biting down on it. But also could have just been some other evolutionary pressures. And we can see the main difference I'll explain between horridus and prorsus that are most visually obvious, other than like very minor skeletal differences, is that prorsus has a much larger nasal horn and is much slimmer face. As you can see, it's got that slim face and that large nasal horn. The brow horns don't really matter because that varies widely within a bunch of different specimens of Triceratops, but yeah, really wonderful. So you can see the body's been edited, being big and round, and that short tail. And then you can see the feet, as I mentioned wrong, of course, all the time. But yeah, it's a really cool animal that we know a lot about. These guys would have been prorsus was in the latest Cretaceous, like real late. So most of the Upper Hell Creek places like that is where you typically find prorsus. So this would have been the species of Triceratops that most likely was around when the meteor hit the Earth that caused the KT extinction. But still really wonderful. Big fan of how these guys have come out. Really a big fan of these guys, and I like the especially the difference because you can see the specimen this one's based off, and most prorsus reconstructions are based off, have these like down-turned horns, which I think really gives it a lot of character, and I'm a big fan. Big fan. So let's move on this guy. So that's our first Triceratops. Now we've got our second Triceratops. So let's. There he is. So here we have our Mr. horridus. So this is, as you can see, let's really compare. So you can see the head here, much thinner with the larger nasal horn. You can see horridus over here, very similar. As you can see, they got this very small brow horn, much more thick and bulkier face. And I really like these long brow horns that they've given it. It almost reminds me of Yoshi Strike, who's a very famous Triceratops who has very, very long brow horns, and it's humongous. He might even be a different species of Triceratops, but we don't really know yet. But he's very famous having these very large brow horns, and I'm a big fan of how this guy come out. You can see that other changes here. Big, bulkier head, and all that. Really, really nice. And then you can see a lot of the changes. The body is pretty much perfect. The neck probably be a little thicker, but it's pretty much perfect. The big round body here comes around with the hip coming down there. And the tail is probably a bit thicker than most people reconstruct it, but it's really, really nice. Big fan. Obviously, the feet are wrong, as I keep mentioning, but really, really nice reconstructions here. And then you can see the frill is pretty much the same. A lot of these epicostals here, young Triceratops, as we can see from the babies, because we have a pretty good growth theories of these guys. They would have had these epicostals as babies and kind of lost them until they were quite flat as adults. So, yeah, that's another really cool little fact about Triceratops. Yeah, this guy's done wonderfully. As you can see, yep, all 5 feet have nails, which it shouldn't be. changes to the legs. I really like these changes here. It's really come out wonderfully. Big fan. So yeah, there's our final one. It's prorsus, and his skins actually didn't come out too bad. But yeah, obviously, as I mentioned, the scales are very wrong. These guys have this very flat, but these guys in life would have had almost like crocodile-like belly scales with these large feature scales going around their body. Yeah, as I mentioned, pretty much look at the Saurian or Prehistoric Kingdom Triceratops. I think I would actually recommend you look at Prehistoric Kingdoms one because they have both species of Triceratops, horridus, and prorsus, and they show their differences off pretty well. So I think they really came out wonderfully, and these guys are pretty wonderful. I like the skin. It really shows how much just changing the models makes it look so much nicer, because I never really liked the Jurassic World Triceratops. But yeah, a really wonderful addition there. I'm a big fan. So let these guys walk off. So yeah, that's perfect. And I know this is a shorter one, but that's okay. I'm trying to keep these a little shorter now. But cool that we covered all these guys. I got to say, I love the Torosaurus and the Pentaceratops and the Pachyrhinosaurus. Big fans. They look perfect. So other than gushing over Feilong's work, I think this will be a very great place to end the video. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember, get the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.